Hello again, and welcome to the latest video in our series reviewing the various vehicles available to the different factions in Gates of Hell Ostfront. So we are just reviewing the ones, I guess, within the normal native game right now. We're not going into the Valor mod quite yet, though we will be adding to that series in the future. But today we're going to be reviewing the light vehicles and, I guess, armored cars and kind of light armored vehicles, scouting vehicles for the United States faction. Right at the beginning, what you can notice is that the US does have a little bit less in the way of actual armored cars. They do have quite a good tank selection, and I think generally what they have is pretty good, but they have a lot more in the way of half tracks that kind of fulfill that same armored car role that you see in a lot of other armies. So starting at the beginning, and I decided to include this even though they are soft skins, as they do feel pretty key to the US faction, really a lot of the allies in the game, and they are a very useful vehicle if you really just need to get a machine gun around. So the Willys MB with the 30 cal, so the famous Willys Jeep. Not really armored, not really, gonna survive getting shot at much. However, it's extremely maneuverable. Extremely quick, 96 speed, and it does get you a good line of sight. It gets a machine gun where you need it to be, and it's reasonably easy to take cover with too. So not a bad choice if you really just need to get a machine gun somewhere. And the same goes for the heavy machine gun version equipped with the Browning 50 cal. Personally, I like the 50 cal. It's much easier to go through infantry with than the 30 cal, though you do have a lot less ammo. However, that extra range and that extra firepower does really help when you are in a soft skin vehicle and you need to, maintain your distance from the enemy. The next one, the Amphibious Transport 4 GPA. So, kind of like the Jeep, but it's a amphibious vehicle, which is kind of neat. Honestly, I don't think it's really that useful in the game. I've never felt really crippled by not being able to cross rivers or lakes. I just don't think it factors into at least conquest battles or really any of the maps in the game that much, but it's a neat kind of thing you can have. A bit slower with a speed of only 70, so you are paying for that amphibious capability, but it does give you essentially the same as the 30 cal armed Jeep. The Tank Destroyer 37mm GMC M6, so a light truck equipped with a 37mm anti-tank gun, and it does have extra armor 6.4, so that's the gun shield to protect the crew. Technically, yes, it is a tank destroyer. It's, I guess, what is the definition of a tank destroyer? A vehicle designed to kill a tank, which this is. It's really just, in my opinion, an easy way to get a 37mm gun to somewhere rather than what you traditionally think of as a tank destroyer, such as like an M10 or a Hetzer or something like that. It is soft skin, but it is quite maneuverable. So speed of 80, and it does let you, get a light anti-tank gun where you need it to be, though you're not going to be using this at all offensively. It's really going to be quite effective, though, on the defense, where you don't necessarily have to tow it. You've got more ammo with you. So yeah, a useful little vehicle, but you're going to need to support it for sure. And, that 37mm gun isn't necessarily going to be the most effective against armored vehicles other than in early battles. Now, I know a lot of you have commented, or a few of you, there's not that many of you anyway, I'm usually referring to conquest battles when I'm talking about this, just because that's where, most of my experience is, though a lot of this will still apply in multiplayer battles as well. The general mechanics are roughly the same other than you're against a human opponent. So moving on, the armed transport, basically the same vehicle, the WC-52 with a 50 cal. These are great. They're really good for towing, so you can move your anti-tank guns, artillery around, and it does give a 50 cal in support. So again, you're not going to use this very offensively, but it is a great way just to get a heavy machine gun around, especially if you do have artillery or a tank. it's going to give you that extra support to deal with infantry that really will be able to overcome artillery in most cases. So good choice. Still pretty maneuverable. Good way to tow some things around, and you can transport a few extra guys as well and tow a gun. So pretty versatile little vehicle, but you have to be careful with it, like any soft skin. All right, now we're moving into actual armored vehicles. So the first of the half-track series. The US really do have quite a lot of options in their half-tracks, and I think that's kind of, maybe the focus of the US Armored Car loadout. And really where you're going to get some of your most effective vehicles. So the first, I guess, most basic version, the M2 half-track. So it's a lot like the others. The main difference is that you don't have a gun shield. Your 50 cal on the front does have a limited traverse, so you're really just restricted to that front arc, though you do have the two 30 cals on the side. Not terribly useful, to be honest, and your crew are going to be a little more vulnerable as they are exposed to incoming fire. You are open top, so you're gonna have to worry about that as well, but that 50 cal does pack quite a punch, so good option to bring. You can also transport up to 10 guys total, so you can take a few infantry with you. So great infantry support vehicle. And you do have, some decent armor with 6.4. So you're not going to have to worry about small arms fire coming in, though you still have to worry about your tires getting punctured and it taking out your gunner. So not a bad option, but definitely has some downsides. However, these half-tracks are great at towing as well. So if you need to move your artillery around or move around anti-tank guns, things like that, great option. Ammo trailers are another option for the US as well. A little cheaper to take than a full ammo truck, and pretty needed, especially if you're going to have an artillery heavy loadout. So the M3 half-track, pretty similar, same armor, so 6.4 to 12.7, so you'll be shrugging off most small arms fire at that thickness, and you do have a Browning 30 cal in this one, so a little bit less firepower. Not bad. It is on a pintle mount, so you're going to have a good field of fire, but you are still vulnerable as there really is no gun shield, and that is a big issue with pretty much every half track. Is your gunner's always going to be vulnerable. It's just something you're going to have to deal with. A lot of them do pack quite a punch and do have the ability to transport quite a few infantry, so it definitely has its downside. I don't think it's ideal, but they are quite versatile vehicles. They are tows, they're transports, they're fire support, they're good. They're definitely good, and if you're a US player, you can make a lot of good use out of them. And the M3A1, so basically the same thing again, but it has a little bit better protection for the 50 cal, and you now can traverse it 360 degrees. That's going to be really quite helpful, and your gunner is a little bit better protected, but only a little bit. Now moving on to the anti-aircraft vehicles. Now these are some of the unique, maybe most American vehicles in the game, because what's more American than a shit ton of machine guns on a truck? So the first one, the MGMC M13. So that is basically the same half track, but it has two 50 cals mounted in a somewhat armored turret. So your turret armor 6.4, it's going to be good against small arms fire, and it does give you quite a lot of firepower with those 250 cals, so you can shred infantry with this, take out soft skins, really quite a good vehicle, and you're going to have that range as well with the 50 cal. Now, just a thing to notice, you are going to be quite vulnerable from the rear. So the gunner is protected from the front. The rear, you can get taken out. However, if you're using this correctly, you need to support it with infantry and keep your distance, because you have a 50 cal, so it doesn't really need you to get up close to cause quite a lot of damage. Now the MGMC M16, the same thing basically, but 2 more 50 cals for a total of 4 50 caliber machine guns. So, you know, same downside with the vulnerable rear, but this is a shit ton of firepower, and it's just cool. It's a pretty iconic vehicle, and you will be able to shred anything soft skin, shred any infantry. You know, if you're using it correctly and controlling where you're firing at, you're going to have a lot of use out of this, especially infantry support. On the defensive, you're also going to be dealing with incoming planes as well, so this is extremely effective against enemy aircraft. So quite a good vehicle, to be honest. I love these in my Conquest Battle loadouts. So the final kind of US anti-aircraft half-track, the CGMC M15A1. So a little bit different. You've got 2 50 cal machine guns, so like the first one, but they've also added in a 37mm autocannon and coaxial dual 50 cals. So it's all in this, you know, reasonably armored turret. It does give you protection from small arms, though you are still going to have some issues with not really being able to fire forward over the crew compartment, though you do have a shit ton of firepower with this, and that autocannon is going to let you take out light armored vehicles. It's going to let you shred soft skins, and you've still got 250 cals as well. So quite a lot of firepower out of this, and an extremely effective anti-aircraft vehicle as well. So great weapon if you're worried about incoming aircraft, great weapon for dealing with infantry. The only issue is you're going to have to be a little more careful with how you use it, because you can't really fire forward, so it's less of an offensive weapon. But on the defensive, dig this thing in and you'll get quite a lot of use out of it. One of my favorite vehicles available to the American faction, for sure. Now moving on to, I guess, armored scout cars proper. The M3A1 scout car, the white scout car. This is the command version with the radios, but they also just have a normal scout version. So, you know, you have the same armor as the half-track, but instead you have now a 4-wheeled armored car. Same issues as some of the half-tracks, where your gunners are quite exposed, you know, with really no gun shield, though you do have a 50 cal. So again, you know, you can stand off a little bit, and you're going to be a lot more maneuverable with a 72 speed. And that's the thing I forgot to mention with the half-tracks. You know, you are still quite maneuverable with them, and you're still quite quick. So don't feel as though, you know, the half-track is going to be limiting you in that much. It really just helps you get across uneven ground. So, you know, good scout vehicle, quite easy to get around, and it does give you a 50 cal, but you are going to be vulnerable, so you're going to have to be careful with how you're using it. The rear-facing machine gun, honestly, haven't really gotten too much use out of this, but I guess it's there if you need to retreat, which if you're in a scout car, a lot of times get in there, make contact, spot the enemy, and then get the hell out of there. So that 30 cal facing backwards, not that bad if you're going to drive away. And this vehicle is also available to the Soviets as well, and I believe the Commonwealth in the Valor mod. So good vehicle, and you can tow with it as well. Now getting into some of the more advanced armored cars. So the M20, this is the open-topped version with the 50 cal. So your gunner, looking down, you are still quite vulnerable, though you are going to be in a quite maneuverable vehicle. Going to be good across uneven ground. You do have 6 wheels, pretty quick. Armor, you know, up to 19.1, so pretty good. You know, you can deal with heavy machine guns, you can deal with pretty much any small arms, though you do still have tires that can get punctures. So not a bad little armored car, but your gunner is quite vulnerable, though you do have a 50 cal. So if you're careful with how you use it, this can be quite a potent little scout vehicle, or good for some infantry support. And that 50 cal again lets you stand off a little bit. And then the final, and kind of, I don't know, it's a pretty cool vehicle, the M8 Greyhound. So essentially the same armored vehicle, but now you have an actual open-top turret on it. And you have a 37mm anti-tank gun with a coaxial machine gun, and then you also have a 50 cal mounted up top. So, you know, it's going to take away a lot of the issues of the M20. Your gunner is going to be a lot more protected as they are in a turret. You still are open-topped, but whatever. And it's kind of a great way just to get a machine gun, a light anti-tank gun somewhere that you need it fast. Great for scouting. It's quite maneuverable. You have decent armor up to 19.1, but you know, you're not really going to be fighting tanks or taking hits with it, but technically you can do quite a lot with that 37mm gun, especially against other armored cars. Infantry, it'll be quite good because you do have that little high explosive round, and you do have a machine gun. So that pretty much wraps up the US armored cars available to you. I guess some final thoughts on it. They have a bit more limited selection when it comes to actual armored cars, really usually limited to the M20 and Greyhound, and then I guess the White Scout car. You do have the Jeep, which is, you know, in addition to just being an iconic vehicle, quite a useful little vehicle just to kind of get a machine gun somewhere. They're very cheap, they're very fast. I've made a lot of use of them early on in the game when, you know, just having that extra little bit of firepower, that little bit of mobility is quite important. Though you're not necessarily going to have the same selection as, say, the Germans or even the Soviets. The Soviets have quite a sort of, you know, limited but kind of diverse group of armored cars, a little more heavier armored cars. No one really has the selection of the Germans, other than maybe the Commonwealth forces. But, you know, what choices you do have are quite solid, and you do have a lot of 50 cals, so definitely you're not hurting if you wanted to play a light armored car based force as a US player. So good options, if a little bit limited, though the half tracks do make up for it and have some of the most iconic and frankly powerful vehicles available to you in that class. So thanks again for watching, and tune in next time for whatever we're going to talk about next. And don't forget to like and subscribe. I really do appreciate it, and it supports the channel. So thank you again, and bye.